Okay, so today was kind of an interesting exercise. I figured I'd do one more exercise that is not part of the anime that I've been working on, just to tune up. And what I decided to work on was, yes, John Carter. I actually pulled out the Barsoom novel that was the last one that Burroughs wrote, and that's the one that's actually called John Carter. And at the beginning of the story, John and Dejah Thoris are on a thoat, I believe, and all of a sudden there's some chaos and Dejah Thoris gets kidnapped, and on we go with the show. So what I could see in my head after reading like the first few pages of the book was this wide shot where you see a dust cloud come up and the thoat coming up from a distance, and then cut to a close-up where John is going to, whoa, trying to get the thoat to stop. I wanted to draw Dejah Thoris in a Frazetta-ish kind of style, which I thought was kind of cool. Although, to be perfectly candid, I actually did not draw her again because I got too busy with doing the tweens and stuff. So, anyway, so speaking of tweens, I decided I'm going to draw a red circle. Well, the red circle is to represent John's, his cranium. And then my whole objective was, if I can figure out the timing on the cranium, then I'll be able to figure out the timing and make the whole drawing work, as I do all the tweens and whatnot. So after getting his cranium to move satisfactorily, then what I'm doing is I'm just defining the contours of other parts of his head that I know are going to have to be rigid. They're not squashing and stretching. They're very rigid. And so it shouldn't be too tough to accurately map out how those contours move. And of course you can't see it really in real time, but and then I just go in and start doing some of the details, the eyeballs, positioning. And this is generally good practice, is flip your canvas every once in a while. So yeah, I think that's working pretty well. So then I did a fair amount of secondary animation with his hair. You could fight me on this one. You might tell me that since John Carter's hair is referred to as quote-unquote close cropped, that he really should have a military style haircut. So we might have to duke it out on that one because I decided to give him a little more hair than probably is appropriate. Okay, so now I basically drew these balls to represent his shoulders. And again, this is something, the whole reason I did this, actually, and there's another speed draw coming up here after this, where I'm really testing a methodology, and the methodology is to draw these balls to represent different nodes of the body that you know are going to maintain their size over time. And if you can get those nodes to move correctly, then it shouldn't be too tough to make the whole anatomy move correctly. So now I diverted into the dust cloud, because at first this thoat in the distance was just sort of crawling up the mountain, but I realized it would be cooler if there was a dust cloud. So that's what that was all about. Well, now that I got the quote-unquote nodes, or the balls, all in place, I don't necessarily want to use the word balls loosely, because when we're referring to John Carter's balls, we are not referring to you know what we're not referring to. No, in fact, we're referring to these nodes. So just to keep this G-rated, I'm going to use the word nodes instead of balls. So I'm sure if you have your children watching this video with you, then you probably appreciate that. And so we want to definitely maintain the G rating, since obviously it was Disney that created the John Carter film that was one of the biggest bombs in the history of cinema. And it did suck, I have to tell you. The special effects were amazing. The characters, the story, the title of the movie, dumber than a box of rocks. But, it just goes to show that you can have $1 billion budget and still get it wrong. So everything about that movie to me did not work. I mean, the Tharks were good. The CG Tharks were pretty good. It's actually the only thing I remember from the movie at all where I said, yeah, that was pretty good. Didn't like the casting, especially Dejah Thoris. Horrible casting. I mean, the woman they picked, I don't remember what her name was. She's some famous Hollywood actress. She's an attractive lady and everything, but she was not Dejah Thoris. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so I do have a proclivity over time to draw people's eyes bigger and bigger and bigger. I have no idea why. So I had to make some corrections. And also, one thing I've noticed in other animation I've done is that when you take a head and you turn it, you know, at an arguably difficult angle, there's a definite tendency to start drawing the head. Like right here, the head, it feels like it's a little bigger when he tilts back. And, you know, that's just, blame that on me. That's just bad drawing in my opinion. I'm just not, I need to practice more rotating heads in all different orientations. So, and by the way, I don't make any claim to this being the definitive rendering of John Carter. In fact, I think it is kind of probably not the greatest version of that character that's ever been done, to put it mildly. But the whole point was to see if we can draw these sticks and balls, and see there, I'm shrinking the head down. So, not too shabby. Wanted to make the eyes a little smaller so they don't look quite so cartoony. And then here I think we're switching to, I just wanted to keep testing this theory. So I drew the character, picked the same character, and then what I did was I started identifying the nodes within the structure of the face that you know are going to be that are going to be important, such as his chin, right there. That is a rigid formation that is not going to squash and stretch. It's not going to change position, whereas a lot of these balls in his hair represent individual nodes that are going to move independently of the main shape, which is his head. Now, I really challenged myself by choosing a second key that was quite a distortion of the first one. So I wanted this guy to turn his head and look up, because I wanted to really challenge myself to get the each of those nodes to move properly. Because again, we're sort of testing a theory here. If you can get each of the nodes to go where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, and maintain their relationship to each other in terms of size and shape, then it should be axiomatic that the whole face will maintain consistency. It'll look like the same guy, you know, from drawing to drawing. And obviously you can see there's little tweaks, you know. Didn't make the jaw quite sharp enough, didn't make the chin quite long enough, blah, 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 blah. I know I'm at a risk here of making the guy look like Willem Dafoe, because he does have a bit of a prominent chin. But, so as you can see, it's really not about drawing the character per se, as it is about drawing the character, moving the nodes, and seeing if then you draw around the nodes, does it still look like the same guy? And I have to say, for the most part, yes, this technique does seem to work. And you can see here now the tween, where I actually did a tween between those two poses, came out quite well. And again, what I did was I'm just looking at the position of ball number 1, ball number 2, you know, right there, you know, delineating the cheek line. Now, draw around that ball, and the cheek should be where it's supposed to be. That's the basic concept here. So, pretty self-explanatory. There's a little bit of secondary animation with the hair, a little bit of dynamics, but for the most part, we're just trying to get from point A to point B. So, and it's a wonderful challenge, both the drawing and the timing. But as I sort of mentioned in yesterday's video, you know, if you get the drawing and the timing right, it's pretty hard to screw everything else up. But if the drawing and the timing aren't right, no amount of ink, paint, color, special effects, none of it is going to help. You're not going to save it. So you got to get this right. The movement and the drawing. Hence, that's what I'm mostly focused on. So we're getting here to the end of the line. I believe I actually inserted another tween, and when I see that happen, I'm going to stop the video because it's just kind of like a waste of time. But as you can see, the final result is not too shabby.